We read in the parsha how Avraham Avinu, he was circumcised at the age of 99. The third day after the circumcision, which is the most difficult day of recovery, the Torah tells us he was sitting at the entrance of his tent at the hottest part of the day. And why was it? The Torah makes it a point how hot it was. So the Midrash tells us that since the beginning of creation till this moment, there was never a day that was hot as that day. And why did God take the sun out of its sheath? Because Avram was occupied continuously in hospitality. He needed the respite. So as a result of causing the day to be such a hot day, there wouldn't be any wayfarers. There wouldn't be any guests to host. And this would give him that respite to be able to recuperate. But when Hashem saw that he was pained, that there were no guests, he sent 3 angels in human form, which he was unaware of. He thought they're just ordinary guests. And the Torah tells us when he sees them, he runs towards them. I mean, the man is 99 years old. He's infirm. And the Midrash tells us when he ran, the wound, being a fresh wound, actually, he was dripping blood. But he was so anxious and so eager to fulfill the mitzvah of hospitality, of achnosis orchim, he ran towards them. And the Torah tells us he prostrates himself before them, which is total negation to these 3 wayfarers. And he asks them to accept his hospitality. Rest under the shade of the tree, wash their feet, have some bread, and then they could go on their way. He prostrates himself to them. Now, how do we understand this? Avram, just speak about his history a little bit, his background. Avram was probably one of the wealthiest people at that time in existence, and he was known as that. Avram went to war against the 4 mightiest kings after his nephew Lot was taken captive, and he defeated them. He was proclaimed by the world, by all the world powers, as the Prince of God, a man of the status of this dimension of being, this breadth and scope of everything. What is he prostrating himself, bowing down before 3 wayfarers? What's the value of this? It seems to be insanity. What is he trying to prove? He's the equivalent of a king. You ask people, you send your emissary, would you like to come? I'd like to have you as a guest at my table. Chazal tell us that his hospitality, in terms of the quality of hospitality, that Shlomo Melech at the height of his power, his banquet table was not the equivalent of what Avram had hosted the angels. Why exactly did he run and did he prostrate himself and almost to the point he begged them to accept his hospitality? How do we understand it? Avraham Avinu had one objective, to bring people back to monotheism. The world was a pagan world. People believed in deities, human sacrifice. And his objective was that he should bring them to the awareness that there's a God, and there's only one monotheistic God. That was the objective. Now, how does he accomplish this? Very often, when a person comes and makes an offer to another person, not knowing who he is, the first thing that goes through a person's mind is, what does he want from me? On a subconscious level, on a conscious level. What does he want? Does he want my money? Does he want my acknowledgement? Does he want my protection? What does he want? Avraham Avinu himself was proclaimed by the world as the Prince of God. He was known as one of the wealthiest people in existence. He was the victor. He defeated the 4 mightiest kings. He needed no protection. He needed no one. So why, when he approaches these strangers, does he prostrate himself? Evidently, he values us. He sees something special in us. When you touch a person, when you make him feel special, and he has no reason to suspect that there's any other reason other than the interest in him, the person now was fully open and willing to embrace anything which he believes is in the best interest of himself. And Avram was a very rational and very articulate and very convincing person. Now Avram delivers his argument, his position, and his refutation on paganism. Why paganism is baseless and monotheism is what you have to accept. And this is coupled with hospitality, which is one of a kind. So the whole idea is, in terms of gaining the trust of the person, he had the trust of the person. Because any overture that he makes, Avram is never suspect. He wants anything other than what's in the best interest of the person. When a person feels your interest is me, now I have to hear what you have to deliver. And if what you deliver to me is cogent and rational and valuable, I embrace it. And that's why Avram Avinu, as the Chazal tell us, nobody ever entered into his tent as a pagan and left as a pagan. He only was convinced that there's only monotheism.